I think we have a go with Revivalcast this Sunday. We've got a special guest, Lethality, and we have no picture for Sailkite. I think he's working from his iPad instead of his laptop. So he's around, but we've just got a picture for him. Yeah, we've got sound for you, Sailkite.
Yeah, the sound should be pretty steady, so no more dropping out. But unfortunately, you don't get to see my mug.
We'll
At least it's a
just
kite. We can tell it's a kite.
Yeah, the voice is good enough for today. So lethality, I think I first uh, encountered you on Landmark. You built the really giant mega city.
I was definitely in Landmark early, although I was not part of the I wasn't really part of the build of that. Maybe you saw me involved with somehow tweeting it or doing something. I built a
Okay.
really cool Moss Isley Cantina in
Okay.
Landmark, but no, I was. I think when I saw that city build, that's when I really I probably tweeted it everywhere. I was like, wow, this is amazing stuff, and what really these kind of games should be about.
Cool. And so, when did you pop over to Revival?
I think I became aware of it sometime in February.
Hmm.
I think it might have been from a Massively article or somewhere, and I just casually looked over and like, wow, this is something it seems like I should have heard of by now. And as I read into it, I'm like just like all of us, I think we just were totally just blown away by everything that they were talking about, the designs they were talking about. So I've been hooked since then. I bought a house as soon as I could. I bought a tenement right away because I was like, wait a minute, what if they sell out? So I just bought something. But then once I got my feet into it, it took me another week, and then I bought a little farm in up in Northgate. So
Hmm.
yeah, so it's been about 6 months so far.
Yeah, I think I found out about it in February, and I think Sailkite was the one that got one of the ones that got Valix into it, and then Valix turned the rest of Theory Forge onto it. Sailkite, when did you find out? Because I think it was your guild that.
Well, so I'll explain. Basically, like I'm related to the guild that Astral and Cessera and Velix are in, but I'm not actually a part of it.
Hmm.
I just kind of helped them a little bit with early brainstorms about like how to move into the revival sort of universe and stuff,
Hmm.
as if we can all talk about that. but
Hmm.
but yeah, so I first learned about the game late, like mid to late 2014,
Hmm.
probably from a Massively post,
Hmm.
and then read about it, and then just stuck around on the reading the forums and stuff for a while. And then obviously it sort of dropped off grid for a bit, but then it came back on grid, and then I was like, whoa! And yeah, so then I did the stuff. And now we're here.
Cool. Um, yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff. I mean, I get caught up in just about everything. I think one of the great things about the community that we have is that the devs are so um, hands-on with us, and I mean, the questions that we get answered every week is kind of phenomenal. Um, so what? So you got your tenement, and then have you come up with a character that you're interested in trying to build, like a role in the game that you want, or are you still waiting to kind of jump in before you?
Well, it's so early, but I mean, I started to kind of plan it out. That's one of the reasons I bought the farm, the little cottage up in Northgate, is because as far as we know, it comes with a little bit of farmland, and I always have an interest in the economy in these kind of games, and it never, hardly ever, really pans out the way I want it to. But I'm really glad now, knowing what we know, even thus, so far about the economy and how everything's will work, that it's going to be, it's going to be important to have some type of sort of hooks into it, I think. And I think this is finally a game or virtual world where if you want to be a farmer, it seems like you can make a go of it. And so that's my character is probably definitely going to be sort of it's probably a little bit cliche when you think about it. This understated this understated farmer up in Northgate Farms who everybody knows, but no one really knows what he does at night or in the off time. And And from there, that's where I'm still planning out. But other than that, people are just going to know me as that friendly guy from Northgate Farms.
And what are you thinking of in the first stages where we're just decorating? I'm kind of thinking ahead to who I want to visit and what I want to do with those people when I'm just visiting the homes in the kind of first stages. Uh, are you thinking, so as a farmer, what would you think you'd be doing in your home before we can actually get outside to play on the farms?
That's a really good question. I don't know what it's going to be, what it's really going to be like, especially because we can't. Which way does it go? Can we visit each other? I can't remember
Well,
before.
we heard in Valix did the visit, and I think we heard from that they kind of have the visitation working kind of already, so we might get to do that early.
Mhm.
So we might even be able to get to visit each other during stage one. Um, but then, yeah, if it's not until stage two is when we're able to walk around outside. So
Yeah,
um,
I
at
you know
that
I
point, you should get to be able to do something with the farms or something. Stage
yeah
three for sure.
yeah I traditionally I haven't been as as into role playing in the online games. So I think this might give me an opportunity. This early access, whenever it starts, when stage one rolls out, and it'll probably help me think through maybe some more of that.
Hmm.
So that way, once we can potentially visit each other, or there might be a little bit more to talk about. I probably have to get into it a little bit more to develop that idea. I'm not sure right now what it'll be like.
Cool.
Yeah, and this early on too, I think it's okay to sort of just be light about it. Like we don't obviously have all the lore built up that we could use to draw on, and we probably won't have put our characters through our creation matrices and stuff like that. But you can always just throw on a little persona and just talk. I think, and just sort of get into the swing of how to think like that, I suppose. But yeah, it'll be cool. I'm definitely going to visit everyone just to say hi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If my computer doesn't bake in an instant.
Sailkite, did you get a chance to look at any of the heat maps? Have you done that yet?
Yeah, I have them on my computer. I
I
have them
mean
as my background.
the latest ones that we got where we can see the uh, the affluence of the areas. Have you looked at the store since they added that?
Maybe not the ones from the store. I had the ones from the fan kit though,
Yeah,
from early on. So I haven't seen the store ones, but I can probably look those up real quick.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's three different ones, I think: location, safety, and affluence. Um, they kind of give you a different perspective of where to hang out and where not to hang out. Um, but we
Look at
also
that.
got a little map, a new map in the latest blog too. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, wow, I didn't even know about the additional map overlays. Somehow I missed it. I've been the last 2 weeks. I've really been sort of out of it. And somebody, you guys mentioned it this week. Like, hey, you're talking about the heat maps? I'm like, what are they talking about? Are they talking about another game? Now I see the little zone overlays.
Hmm.
That's really cool. Wow, that's awesome. But yeah, the rendering or the concept that we saw this week in the blog of Crowns Rock was interesting. I think that's the first manifestation of a piece of concept of the whole sort of area,
Hmm.
and it does kind of match up to the map shape that we see. Orientation. It looks like we talked about it briefly in IRC. It looks like we're sort of looking at it from the south, and so I can't see my farm specifically, but that's okay. But but it looks really cool. I was, of course, looking for any zooming in to see if I could see any details. Is there any interesting geographic anomalies and that kind of thing? I know it's just a concept, but it was fun.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I loved about seeing this is it seems like that, over to I guess if we're looking forward, is we're looking forward, right? So the harbor is south of the city. We're looking north, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
So over to
approximately.
the west, there doesn't seem to be a lot of trees over there.
Yeah, well, so the cool part, lore spot, the west side of the island was where the first settlers, the first Brogine settlers, I suppose, the monks, first landed and then started sort of setting up their camps to build the first Brogine Abbey and such. So the whole western side of the island is basically either swamp or a quarry, actually, on the southwest. So a lot of the stone that went into various parts of the city at different times came out of the southwest portion of the map, and then there is technically some farmland and such closer to the city walls, of course, but yeah, it's mostly cleared for that reason, I imagine.
I am square in the meager section of affluence.
Nice. The governor was asking what we're talking about. So we're talking about Revival game, if you didn't know that, and I just posted a link in there. But most specifically, right now we're talking about the most specifically we're talking about the map that was in the latest blog of Crowns Rock, which is cool. So we've seen a top-down, but we haven't seen this kind of isolinear view where we an outside view where we get some foliage and stuff like that to see as well.
And it does. It looks like one big rock when you look at it. It's a big rock.
Yeah, but it's nice to see the docks over there, and I'm wondering what the difference is between the docks directly south and then a little bit east. There's a different kind of like bridge or something coming out over the water.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember if that was marked on the map, the store map.
I don't actually think it does have a designation.
I think it does.
Does it? I mean, I guess that'd be like the guards' quarters or whatever, but I would expect that to be more near the...
Yeah, that's closer. So, yeah, I just don't know what that structure is coming off the water.
Well, hey, to be fair, off in the forest, right, on the map, there's a couple little buildings, right, that we have no knowledge about. So who knows? There could be something of a correlation between those buildings and that separate little pier. Who knows?
Yeah. You never know. Yeah, it's interesting. Business. I know it's just concept, but it's cool to see it's sticking close. I mean, it's described somewhere, and that's what the artist went off of. So it's interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there actually will be a pier with a little Ferris wheel on there, place for us to party. Yeah, Blackwell Harbor, but I don't think that's quite that spot. I think I'm just looking at the...
Yeah, it looks a little further
map.
over.
Yeah. Cool. So, but what tripped you out the most about the map? What really excited you about that specific perspective?
I think just realizing that it, and I read it before, it's one of the, I forgot, it's a part of a certain set of archipelago, but I can't remember what they were called, if they had a name or not. But just seeing it like that, for some reason, it gave me the idea that it's not flat. I was thinking about it was flat, but it's clearly not. And it looks bigger than I thought, if it's sort of representative of where the city sits, and then there's more room outside of it than I thought. And then you get a better picture of the denser forest. I don't know. It just obviously it did what it's designed to do, and that kind of bring it to life a little bit more.
It's just the Blackwell Islands. I don't think there's any real other name for it. I mean, it's all in the Blackwell Sound, so I guess Blackwell is just a pretty good general descriptor. With Crowns Rock, I guess, sort of being like one of the main islands in there. Yeah, I like that it gives a good sense of sort of shape and elevation, like because obviously looking at the 2D overhead map, we don't necessarily get a feel of how I mean, we can sort of judge by lines and stuff, but we don't really get a sense of like the lay of the land. But this really gives a cool sort of like there's like some karsts almost looking stuff going on. It's very like cliffs of England sort of feel. Which I think is really neat. I'm actually quite excited to see how this all renders out, even just in more concept art. But yeah, it's real cool. I'm imagining that that was probably Richard Lung again, actually, if I had to guess.
Yeah, and I guess now that I'm paying more attention to the outer details instead of where all the houses are on the
Yeah.
top-down map, I do see that there's, it's deforested over to the southwest
Yep.
and more densely forested over towards the southeast, which is kind of cool. Um, and then the sparse little woods everywhere else. That's interesting detail going on there, and I'm not used to imagining what that'll be like. I guess I can see some places that would be more like plains or desert type areas in other games. I think I was expecting to see more forestation once we left the city walls, but that won't be the case depending on where we go.
You know what I'm interested in seeing, and I don't know. I think on the map, I'm just looking now at the housing map, but I know in discussion somewhere on the forums or somewhere there was talk of houses and dwellings you could procure that are outside of the city walls, and I don't know if that meant somewhere on Crown's Rock or just elsewhere in the game. But I remember that discussion, and that's what I'm wondering too. These aren't just art. Does this map represent, or does the drawing represent anything like that? I thought there were a couple, and I can't find them now.
No, there's
The
all that.
cottages, the farm cottages.
No, I'm not talking about those. Somebody asked a question about, like, other than these homes that are explicitly for sale, are there dwellings you can take up outside of? And the answer was yes, but I don't know if that
Ah,
was to Crown's Rock or if that was in the big in
Hmm,
the larger world.
hmm.
huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's dive into the blog, which was the life of an archaeologist this week. That was pretty cool. And we got little snippets of other characters and the roles that they could play too. What was your favorite part, Sailkite, of the blog this week?
I would like to point out that there is a grand grimoire mentioned in this blog. And in case you don't know anything about magic and grimoires in Revival, basically grimoires are spell books, and grand grimoires are spell books that are like crazy powerful, like real crazy powerful, potentially even have a mind of their own crazy powerful. And like, come on, man. It's like the Book of the Wilds.
Yeah.
Like, come on, I'm so giddy. It's so cool. I mean, it's a little bit OP, right? Because this seems like an exceedingly mild adventure to get to something like that. But still, it's a grand grimoire. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's a little interesting how this was played out to us because it is kind of set up as just a kind of little adventure. She's looking for Grand Grimoire. Okay, maybe. But yeah, it is a Grand Grimoire, so you would think that she would expect it to be fairly powerful. Um, and we get to the end of the story, and yeah, ground, the carpet is literally like swept up from under their feet. Um, and we don't know what happened.
Yeah, that part at the end, we could almost start there. The end of the blog where they, sensed this presence or something was there. I wondered, is there another skill, or if they had another party member with them, could they have learned more about whatever that was, in that moment? Like, are there other types of skills or magic that could have gave them more information than they had right then?
Hmm. Well, I mean, we don't have the end, and it's not necessarily an end to the story. It could be leading up to something else. We saw that with the Crook. Morrow started in one story and literally ended in a in a
Hmm.
different blog. So maybe we'll learn more about this group as the blogs continue to come to us.
Yeah, I like how
Um,
they're working like that.
but yeah, I liked that we got an indication of what it might be like to bring a scholar along and to remind us that it might be a good idea to also bring along a combat person along, even if we are more interested in just the archaeology or just the magic side. It's good to have somebody who has some weapon in hand to protect us just in case.
Sure.
Yeah, well, and I like the part that there's sort of like two phases to it. Or well, I mean, technically there are two things that have two phases, but I mean like first, Lucia and gosh, what's her name? Lucia and Alex go into this location, and they can only make it so far, right? And so they
Hmm.
realize that they have to then sort of leave and go bring in come back with a specialist, right? And normally speaking, if you're in a dungeon or something, right, doing a 5-man dungeon run or something, like you just call up a replacement healer because your current healer is bad and or being trolly or something, or and but in this you actually have to take the time to sort of plan a little bit, and go about preparing to go deeper um, into the adventure, as it were. And I just like the dynamic of that, that there's a
Yeah.
time component which doesn't necessarily manifest in other examples I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah. And the neat thing there too is this is one of those things like wherever she got the rumor from, wherever she heard about that potential for the shrine, it's a kind of thing that no one else could know of, or maybe lots of people know of. And based on how the story went, it sounds like they were the first ones to crack the code and figure out how to get in there and everything. I thought that was pretty neat. Just like we've talked about in the forums and everywhere, that's really the definition of an adventure, right? So one thing that I was curious about is, so the way that they found, could anyone have found the shrine without the tag? Like, could they have just stumbled across it? And then, the candle that was lit, was it because it was a consecrated candle lit by an arcanist that showed, the words, or could any candle have done that? I'm just wondering about some of those things and how they play out. Just by dumb luck, if someone was to stumble upon and do those things, or does it take the skill of the characters to execute on those?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is going to have to do with the tags. So probably anybody could come across the dungeon as a dungeon, and then picking up the clues. That's an interesting question. How, what do the tags actually trigger? So I think it's fairly clear that the writing wouldn't show up, or people wouldn't be able to see the writing without having the skills to do so. But
Well, it seems to me at first that the like, as long as you happen to have a suitable offering, or this candle, I suppose, if that's sort of the traditional demon offering, I don't know, but I suppose as long as you had the necessary candle, it seems like anyone would be able to actually see the Eltsylvain or whatever. But obviously they can't understand Eltsylvain without having the knows Eltsylvain tags, and whatnot, which is obviously what they are known for. Um, and yeah, most certainly, I think anyone could stumble upon it, right, and be
mhm.
like, oh, hey, there's a shrine in here, huh,
Hmm.
and not necessarily know what it is or anything, right? But yeah, I mean, I think a piecemeal revelation thing could happen if the right circumstances came about without necessarily intending to make things work. Um,
Yeah, it's cool. Omba and Snipe are in the chat, kind of confirming that, which I like. I like the idea that the stuff is in the world. It's just not magically triggered only if you have done something previous. I mean, to a great extent, that's what's happening through adventure. But I like that stuff's already. It may have. I guess what I'm saying is, it feels like there's more than one way to skin the cat, which I kind of like, even if it's remotely, a very remote chance to do so.
Right. Well, I mean, they're lighting a consecrated candle for the goddess, so it seems like it's not just any candle. It would have to be one consecrated to Dema. Um, and it may be that anybody who happens to have a candle consecrated to Dema would be able to do that. Um, so yeah, there's some tag stuff going on that not just anybody would. I mean, it's not just any candle or any person. There's
Right.
tags involved with that. Um, but yeah, we had a discussion last week, early last week, I think, about heralds. I think it was actually could have been partly due to the previous blog, but wondering what role heraldry would play and whether how that would tie into symbology. And one of the things that I liked about this blog too was the difference in uh, being able to read the symbols. So Lucia was able to do the arcane symbols, and then Arno was able to do the scholarly language symbols, and those were kind of different skills. Um, but it actually illustrates one of the types of adventures that I've been looking forward to in MMORPGs for 15, 16 years, and that's having scholars, knowledgeable people, even if it's just wizards, going along specifically to um, decipher languages. Um, that's a great thing to have, and again, the idea of these people just wanting to certain characters wanting to go out just to discover to unearth arcana or to unearth you know artifacts and relics, but they have to have protection along with them for combat just in case things go south. But having a role in the group that's potentially non-combat and just there for knowledge is a great thing.
Yeah, for sure. I remember you remember watching Stargate on TV, and bringing the engineer along and everybody. It all was important, and it's so easy to fall away from that concept in some of the games we've been giving because everybody kind of optimizes and shifts into this one mode of get to the end and get the loot. But this hopefully has a different, obviously, purpose and design intention. So that makes it cool.
Yeah, and maybe there's a reason to bring a farmer along.
I had a question. Sorry, Sale. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I mean, I was just going to say, like, also just, I mean, even sort of considering the role play genealogy of the thing, like, in Dungeons and Dragons, you don't really need a scholar because everyone just gets, 2 to 5 languages, and, everyone's a polyglot. And so if you come across, a brownie or something, you can just talk brownie to it, keep all your combat skill, and then, also just, handle the language stuff. But obviously, it seems like Revival will have some more segregation on that, and reward the kind of dedication you would find appropriately. But as you were saying,
yeah, I made a note about the luminous mushrooms that they described. I wonder if those are just there for effect, or do they actually have some value? Are to traders? Are they harvestable cooks or arcanists? I just no detail goes unturned.
I'm sure someone could use them, and I'm sure you probably need some sort of special technique to harvest them anyway. Or who knows? Maybe they're a trap, and if you try to harvest them without being aligned towards stamina, they release poison clouds and kill your character, and you have to go do the whole mortality gate shtick.
Yeah, yeah, that's a bigger thing to the design of the world. Like, is everything something out there? It's really interesting.
Right, and again, bringing that back to bringing a farmer along, would it behoove a group to have somebody has the skill to harvest those mushrooms without destroying them? And would it behoove the farmer to bring them back to their farm and decide to start farming luminous mushrooms? I mean, that's an interesting concept.
That's the dream right there.
What could you turn that into? Do we use those in place of? Can you crush them and use them in place of torches?
Put them on luminous pizza.
Ooh. Well, them being mushrooms, that's a whole different story to begin with. Yeah. I'm going to check real quick to see what questions we have, because I think we had a couple. Okay, so we do have a couple. I thought we had one from Legendary Neurotoxin. Did he not use a Q for that?
He might have just been asking the devs in chat.
Yeah,
I didn't see a queue anywhere, or no, there was one from Mother Rabbit.
Yeah, we'll get to that a little bit later. Are we gonna stop at 1:15? What time did we start?
Yeah, we started a little late. I can go late if you guys can go late.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good. Yep, I'm not booked for anything after this.
Yeah. Cool. So what else? Anything else in the blog that piqued your fancy?
Well, I had a thought too about the language, the Ed Sylvain, I guess Eld Sylvain,
Hmm.
as maybe it's pronounced. Um, having the archaeologist read that, uh, I'd be interested to know how, if he was of a lesser skill in archaeology or that part, or language or whatever symbology, whatever that would have played into that. What could they have? I guess back to the original point, maybe even could they have gotten through that? What would he have seen differently, if anything, or would it, or if he was more advanced? I'd be curious to know how that progresses as you get better at those things.
Right.
That's just one language. It sounds like of potentially who knows how many,
Right.
and that was really interesting because what if they brought him and he couldn't do anything? What is? I guess it goes back. We had, I think, Sale, this discussion briefly in IRC. Is there, what are the numbers? What are the RPG numbers behind what's going on versus the characters' skills,
Hmm.
player skills, and how does it play into these kind of things?
Hmm. Um, yeah, I mean it's interesting because we did see that for Arno study ability, that said that the letters only appeared to him, and then he had to go through the translation. So the lettering didn't
Mm,
even appear to the other two.
that's true. That's right. It did say that. Snipes, the message would have been partially translated if he didn't have the necessary skill knowledge. So he'd gotten, you need to gibberish if you want to open the gibberish, otherwise gibberish. So be careful. So
Excellent. Just the
that's
kind
just
of thing that will entice you to go headlong into
hey,
whatever is ahead.
exactly.
Adventure.
Yeah, and I have to wonder too if you don't have enough skill. So because there's a couple things, right? There's not having there's having so little skill that everything appears as gibberish, and then there's having just enough skill that you can make out something, but maybe it was the wrong translation. So that could be fascinating too, when you think you're being told this, but you're really being told that. And what happens if you do that instead of this?
Well, it's something they can play with, I think. So for maybe like quote easier, um, easier dungeons or easier texts or translations or some such. Um, the quote, the gibberish or whatnot could translate out as just like a more vague synonym of whatever the specific word in question is, right? But for something more cryptic or precise, perhaps you could intentionally set it up so that people with less knowledge might read it as a completely wrong or even antagonistically misleading word, right?
Hmm.
Like a trap for weeding out people in the know versus people not in the know with some sort of jargon or cant or something.
Hmm.
Um, so I think it matters a lot on the specific case and the design, because in some cases it would be low stakes, and in other cases it would be higher. I imagine just by sort of gradation.
Yeah, that's kind of fascinating too, and that we've been seeing in some of the blogs. We've been seeing that the mages are writing. They're writing into a book or writing onto a scroll in order to initiate the magic. And in one case, the mage wrote something on a scroll and then gave it to somebody else to be able to cast, who isn't necessarily a mage. Um, so that could be interesting too. What happens if the non-mage reads that wrong? I was actually originally wondering what happens if the mage is not skilled enough and says the wrong word. Could it trigger a different spell than they were expecting? Um, but I wonder if that's even more possible for somebody who's just reading a scroll who's not a mage.
Hmm.
I think that'd be great fun. who knows what kind of chaos could come out of that, man? That'd just be fantastic. Like, shoot, Claudio Barada necktie, right? And
Mm-hmm.
summon summon Azathoth instead of Cthulhu or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Snipe Hunter says casting magic isn't safe. So, um, but yeah, I mean that's it. And of course, for me, that just comes up with another character. That would be a great character to have. Somebody that, you know, don't bring digs. He never reads it right.
He's gonna
We're
summon
asking
something
for
we don't even
ice and we
want.
get fire. Like he's gonna
Uh,
blow it up. Which this reminds me of like Farscape, the main character John Crichton from Earth. One of the things I loved about that TV show is that he's the typical American go hard, die hard guy. He comes up with all these fantastic ideas, and typically that guy is the one that saves the day. But on Farscape, all the other people on the ship are like, "Oh, don't listen to John. He's gonna screw it up." And sure enough, he usually ends up screwing it up. But he's supposed to be the guy that's your inspiration and the leader, but it doesn't work out as well as he planned often. Um, and that would be fun to be able to play.
so So Snipe just mentioned something in there that's in chat that's along the lines of something I was thinking about here. He mentioned you still play the casting game even when you read a scroll. So if you're no good at it, you risk problems. I was wondering that too about all the characters in our little story here. They go to get the archaeologist. Could they have, even though they weren't trained archaeologists, could any one of them have attempted that mini game, or do they probably need at least minimally some tools with them or something? But I was wondering about that. Could any character at any time try something just for the sake of trying it, and will trying it increase their skill at getting better at it at that in that scenario?
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
interesting because I think because we have a limited amount of skill points, um, and I think we have to choose between what we're focusing on and what we're not focusing on once we kind of max out on allotted skill points. I don't think we have minimal skills in everything.
That's what I don't know, and I'm a bad fanboy, but I'm not sure if we talked about if it's been known that there's skill points, or I know about skill decay, which led me to believe, well, you can't stay good at everything, but maybe you could try everything. I don't know. I don't remember if it was talked about.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we have talked a lot about skills per se, right? Like categories and the kinds of things that show up within them, but we haven't really talked about or heard about like actions, or the actual what you do specifically in the game sense, right? To do them, right? Do you get sort of a little the revival interface buttons are called action tiles in this case, and so do you, when you choose to invest a little bit of skill into archaeology, do you unlock um, the study action tile that you can then bind or whatever and use, or does everyone have access to ore location for mining or what have you? And I don't think we've actually really talked about it or heard much about it, because I don't think anyone's really asked so far. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Like, I mean, the intuitive part of me says that some of them should just be, attemptable, right?
Yeah.
With very low chances of success, right? Like, Alex should be able to sort of pick up and look at the fish idol and, maybe sort of deduce some things about it. But, maybe not understand as much as Arno does just because he has knowledge and whatever. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I want that to be as organic as possible too, but at the same time, that almost has to be more systemic to some extent. I don't know. It's
Yeah, I think it's gonna depend on the situation because in the example that we have in the blog, again, the writing the writing fluoresced for Arno when he used his study ability and not for the other two. Um, but you would think there would be times when there's just writing on the wall and everybody can see that there's writing on the wall, just it's meaningless to most people who don't have the skill set for that particular language. Um, and then what happened with Lucia when she was studying the writing on the, was it a statue?
The one in the inner shrine, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
did
she
other
was an
people
arcanist.
even,
She saw some kind of
and
incantation or
those were
something.
glyphs, but I don't remember offhand
Let's see.
whether the other two even noticed them. So it says she uses her abilities as an arcanist to study the statue, and that study reveals the arcane symbols.
Hmm.
And that's kind of interesting. I mean, I just saw, and I might have mentioned this on a Revivalcast a few weeks ago, but I saw recently there are these glasses that colorblind people can wear and allows them to see colors that they weren't able to see before. And when you watch some of the people put them on, one person put them on at like a Home Depot in the gardening section, and he's looking at trees and not trees, but bushes. And at one point, he's like, "Oh, there's like blue flowers in between those those bushes. I didn't. They all seem the same color to me. I didn't even notice those before." Um, so it could be something like that, where there's some instances where if you don't have the skill, it just all looks the same to you. You don't even,
Hmm.
nothing even sticks out for you to even try to study more. Um, but yeah, we don't know for sure.
Yeah, Snipe's given some good chat in there and some information. So probably due for a forum post I could make. But that is a whole, considering the number of skills, whether it's crafting or combat or harvesting or whatever, whatever other categories of skills there might be. That's probably an interesting. Maybe it works in more than one way.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and read through these because these are good to have. So Snipe Hunter says there's a few factors. Puzzles in the world like this have a minimum knowledge or skill needed to know it's there, but even then, the difficulty of the game you play to do the translation is modulated. How difficult the puzzle is vs your skill level. Um, if there was no minimum on the puzzle, anyone could attempt that puzzle. A success would then reward the character with some number of points in that skill. That's interesting. Based on how much more difficult it was compared to your skill. So the intent is that skill gain is sort of organic, that it reflects how you play your character. But it's also only success based, and points are only gained when you do something challenging to you and succeed, which is meant to sort of fight things like jump grinding, which makes sense. Yeah, I remember that success is important. I think one of the examples that I'd seen before was like trying to practice with the practice combat with the target dummy. At some point, that only gets you so much skill. Um,
Right, that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah.
He also said Lucia used symbology's version of study to see those glyphs. Um, and then Sailkite asked a question to see them at all snipe or to recognize them as glyphs and not decoration, which is another interesting point.
Hmm.
Um, Snipe Hunter says a little of both. It depends on the puzzle. In some cases, seeing them at all won't be possible without some skill. In others, the symbols will be there, but would only glow when you use study if you were skilled enough. That's a fascinating concept too. That you see things, but you don't know that they're something other than decoration. Hmm.
Hmm.
Right. Because, like, I mean, I'm thinking that you could, you can hide, hide information in plain sight, right? With, sort of, the embossing and embellishment on, what do you call it? Like a banner or something. Not a banner, but like a, an inscription or a carving or whatever, that frames the ceiling and stuff, right? And there could be information hidden in there that you would have to sort of be aware of, and know about to pull out of the forest of just image, right? And that it would then glow to you if you happen to be savvy to that particular thing.
Snipe Hunter adds that in some cases, seeing the symbols, there's meant to be the first clue of what to do as well. So the designers have a role to play in how it works too. And that kind of has me wondering about the role of madness, in that, he says you'll need skill to see things sometimes, but I wonder if going mad will give you some special insight that other people might not notice.
Well,
That
I mean,
could be
if
interesting too.
skill and madness are both just uh, a continuum of tags, right? Like
Right.
if your your present skill that you've earned in whatever in symbology, right, essentially imparts upon you a set of tiered tags, or effectively tiered tags. And if madness operates the same way, right, then I think it's totally reasonable that going out and studying something while also being a little unhinged might reveal maybe more to you than you would otherwise see, and possibly things that are false and not really there even in magical practice or other practice, and lead you sort of in the wrong direction as well, which I think would be interesting. But there's problems with that, so don't run too far with that idea.
Well,
Without
Snipe Hunter says that madness is a skill, and I'm kind of hoping that madness will lead to things like, um, you killing the monster that's entered your home, and you find out it's your neighbor. Um, it's the old grandma that lives next door, and not really a monster. Or rather, everybody else realizes it's the grandma that lived next door, um, while you were thinking that it was a monster. But um,
All right, I've got it. Madness unlocks the cow level.
Mad cow disease? What?
Oh wait, we're not playing Diablo. Never mind. But yeah.
well, let's see. I'm going to check on questions again. I know we had one from Mother Rabbit. I only see one. Oh, I see two. Okay, so hold on one second. I'm going to try and get these on screen for us. So Mother Rabbit asked, will it be possible to be digging in the farmyard on my property and finding some super awesome artifact, or maybe a treasure map clutched in the bony hand of a skelly? And I think that sounds like it would be possible, but
Yeah, possible, maybe not probable. And a storyteller would probably have to plant it there, either by design or by secondary design, by which I mean either there's already some lore about your farm and you just don't know it yet, or they sort of retcon something in there, and well, not retcon, but someone decides to plant something in there based on whatever means. Just ditch a body in Rabbit's backyard, it'll be fine. And you find something therein. But yeah, I mean, it's possible. Just no guarantees.
what were you thinking, Lethality? You're going to be the one digging on your farm. Are you
Well,
hoping to find stuff?
yeah, I mean, that would be interesting. Although I don't know if that wasn't the plan for my farmer, but it brings to me, I go right to the other side of the question. Like, okay, do I want someone else digging on my farm? What are can I dig on anyone's farm? Can I dig anywhere? What does back to the world systems and how they're set up, will I have to hire guards or have a dog to keep people off my property and that kind of thing? But I don't know. I definitely want there to be, like Omba has hinted at, taking notes as to who lives where and what has happened there, and everything's got a history. So I am curious about that kind of stuff for sure. I don't know if I wanted to, result in my cottage being twirled off to another dimension or anything like that, but you never know.
So, real quick, Ombwa says that the grandma that lives next door is a monster, but you're the only one that can see it, maybe, which is much more likely. Um, huh. And says that I think this is in response to the question. Seems that like digging could result in artifacts, perhaps in Westgate Farms, since it's near the cemetery, which is kind of interesting.
Yep.
And Snipe Hunter reminds us that the digging won't be voxel deformation, but there is a dig and bury system in the design. Yeah.
Right.
Um, and then we did have another question from Verde Manzana. He asked, do you grind madness by tripping on shrooms?
Oh, Verde. He's mean.
Um,
He's
I
real
mean,
mean.
I hope that that can kind of, some shrooms will be able to lead us into some kind of maddening dream state. But I mean, right? I would hope that our intoxication, drinking would, yeah, don't we have alcohol tolerance is one of our, it's not a skill, it's
Skill. Oh, it's a skill.
attribute or something like that. Um, and I would think that would be true of drugs in general, but I'm wondering what kind of effects we'll see. Will we have the EverQuest blurring screen effect if we get too drunk, or um,
I would think at least, probably.
going into psychedelics if we're on shrooms?
It'd be
Yeah.
interesting.
Let me explain about Verde though, because he acts like he doesn't know what he knows, but he knows a lot. Verde is actually, he works at Elphonic, and he is an assistant to Ombla and Snipe Hunter. Technically, he's an apprentice, but he asks these questions like we know the answer, and he already knows the answer. He knows because he's probably written some of the docs on it. But like this guy, he asks questions. He knows what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
He's trolling. He be trolling. So
Um, he's
we love
looking
him though.
sideways like, who? In the chat. Um,
All right,
Snipe-
now he owes us. Now he owes us a little drop, a little secret drop of info in chat. After that troll.
Ombwa says that drug use is pretty rampant in the Lovecraft mythos, and Snipe Hunter says, I think shrooms would give you temporary madness and then take it away when it wore off, but just as likely that shrooms would drop your body to the ground unconscious while you're whisked away to the dreamlands. So, drunken forest races, yeah, I wanna play around with some of that. Um, Conan's companion who said Stygian Black Lotus the best. Choose slowly.
Yeah, but you see
Choose.
what it did to all those people in that. How do you say the city Xanthul?
Yeah, we're trying to. Ohm was asking about the slithering shadow, which we've got to get around to sometime.
I think
I
we could
think we
lightning
had,
round it.
huh?
I think we could lightning round it.
We
Yeah,
could. Did you get to finish that lethality?
I did. I did finish it.
Um, One of the things that I liked about it was that it did remind me of another story that we had read, The Charnel God, which is kind of connected to the Cthulhu mythos loosely. Um, but you did bring up earlier, before we started the show, you were wondering if Robert E. Howard um, is sharing the same universe or world as Cthulhu, and it is. So yeah, that was kind of cool. I mean, we read that. I read that such a while ago. But this is the Slithering Shadow. This is Robert E. Howard Conan story, and it starts off with Conan and a female companion out in the desert. They've just left some kind of battle. They don't have a lot of provisions with them. I don't think they have. I think the companion ends up drinking the last of the water, um, and they have to search for shelter, if I'm remembering that right.
Hmm.
Yep. And then they find a city in the desert, and they go in. Um, they see a dude who they think is dead. It's not quite dead. It's actually very much so in an incredibly deep drug-induced sleep, which I imagine can happen quite readily in revival, as per certain mushrooms, and so things continue on from there. Um,
So one of the things I found really fascinating about the story, and this is just because it's written in the time that it's written in, is the the I want to say the misogyny of the companion. I mean, she can't really do anything. She's just there as the damsel in distress. Um, but she's written as not having a lot of brains, having kind of flighty female interests, um, cares about her looks, um, more so about the, and wants to make sure that her man, is taken care of. Um, so that was kind of interesting to me that we didn't have a stronger, more equitable female. She's only there to heighten the role in the story. Um, Treated almost like a child in the story, but I think that's just typical of the era that the author was in. Um, Ombo says, "My God, right? Conan is straight up male. She's just curves and silk." Yeah,
It was interesting reading that, and it just jumped out at you as how, you know. And I have this thing too, and I haven't done a lot of reading in the Conan universe in the past, so my reference point for Conan is Arnold Schwarzenegger.
hmm
So I couldn't help but laugh through some of the comments because I would read them as him. So
right, right. That's funny. I did not read it with the Schwarzenegger accent. I'm gonna have to go back through and
it's a
think
totally
about
different
that.
story, I
That's
think.
funny.
Then, but
I
yeah,
I try not to because I know I shouldn't. You're right. Like technically, I was aware of Arnold Schwarzenegger as Conan before I started reading any Conan, right? But I've made a conscious decision to try to not read
yeah,
any of Conan's line in Arnold
smart move.
Schwarzenegger's voice. But yeah, I agree. I mean, the female, quote, stereotype, or tropey in the Conan books is not particularly flattering, towards modern perceptions of women in relation to men, and all that. And I think there's even like a genital mutilation scene and like a bunch of jealousy spats. It's an awkward dynamic, to read about in a modern context. But I think we can all understand that things will be perhaps a bit more equitable, and justifiably so in the Leston, versus in the Conan universe.
But it was kind of nice to have the female protagonist was,
Yep.
female antagonist, the villain. I mean, that was kind of interesting. She was a little bit stronger of a character um, than the companion was. Um, yeah, and so they get to the city, and it seems fairly deserted where they are for the most part, or like recently deserted almost. They go into places and they see banquets set up, but nobody's around. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I mean, they felt. I think at one point, they could tell someone was there because he noticed the warmth of the couch and the shape of the hips that were there,
Right.
something like that. So it was interesting. It felt to me, it actually unfolded a little bit like, again, my pop culture is, it felt a little bit like the episode of a Twilight Zone unfolding. The way the things that they were happening, they couldn't believe.
Mhm.
Did they really hear that or see that? And then they kept progressing on and on, even though they shouldn't have. They did that, and it's just interesting.
But that was another one of those dynamics. I always say that one of my favorite things to say is that uh, we know that man was created first because God was like, "What is this thing? It's going to kill itself. I've got to create something to remind it, honey, don't do that. Don't climb up on the roof. Don't fix that yourself." And in this, it was like the companion. I forget her name, but she kept saying, let's get out of here. Maybe we shouldn't be here. And he was kind of like, "No, we will go forward.
Right.
It's fine. Into the fray."
we don't need directions.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, so eventually they end up coming across a femme fatale. Now, did they run into somebody who got caught up by the slithering shadow before they ran into the femme fatale?
Yeah, they did. Although they didn't really run in. I think they were talking, and then the things that Conan was saying, or Conan was
Hmm.
saying, caused him to burst off and eventually get silenced by whatever it was that was supposedly hunting them all. So they did have one encounter with someone besides the initial guard that they killed.
Hmm. Hmm. We're getting mentions of Red Sonja in chat, which is cool too. Um, yeah, and
Oh, yeah.
so they meet up with the femme fatale, and she has designs on Conan. He kind of decides he's not really into it because he already has a companion. Now she wants him to just stick around and stay with her,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, he took a second glance, though. I believe there was some mention of the the way that he interacted and the way he took a second look and I don't know where I don't have the tab open anymore actually,
Yeah,
but
the other interesting thing to me here was the kind of subtle racism in the sense of the femme fatale is beautiful and light skinned, and the Conan's companion is dark skinned. So the femme fatale is expecting, you're gonna fall for my beauty because I'm light skinned and wonderful. Of course, you'll want to be with me. And that seemed to be reminiscent of there was some superiority there too. I think the lighter skinned people seem to have that air of we are superior. Um, so yeah, she was expecting that she'd be able to lure Conan to stay with her, but he decided to be loyal to the companion he already had. Um, and so the femme fatale decides to kidnap the companion, just whisks her away, and is going to sacrifice her to the slithering shadow. Yeah.
it seemed like that. Yeah, for sure. And that all happened really quick. I was kind of rushing through the story at that point. I don't totally get how they vanished in the midst of Conan there, but yeah, she seems to be to take him away or take her away to this other room, and the from what I can tell, there was I forget if it must have happened before she bound her. There was some kind of struggle, right? There
Hmm.
was she managed to grab a dagger, I think,
Hmm.
off of the I should really have the name of the character instead of the antagonist, but and there was some kind of fight, so she thought that was very disrespectful of her
Hmm.
to think about attacking
Hmm.
in such a way.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually it all ends well. Conan at least uh, injures or wards off the shadow, and is not overtaken by it. He then crashes in on antagonist lady and companion lady. Again, I forget their names as
Hmm.
well. I do apologize. Crashes in on them, breaks it all up. They get out, run away, and continue, I guess, into the next adventure. Um, I don't know what comes next in the timeline of things,
Yeah. So
but they do make it out.
he actually ends up fighting this. I don't know what is. It's like a giant part frog thing. Is there anything else like that in that comes up in the Cthulhu mythos? Do we know that has those kind of attributes once he starts actually fighting with it? I'm not aware of anything specifically, but it does kind of remind me of similar alien type monstrosities. Um, and yeah, he has quite the struggle with it. He finally, I think, he drops it down a pit, gets it to jump down a pit of some kind.
Yeah.
But he's mortally wounded in the process. And what I read is that he was actually the closest to death that he's been in any other Conan story at that point. Um, but he's given some special drink to refresh him, and it ends up actually being a healing draught uh, that ends up healing him in the end. Um, Ombwa says it's almost Tsithogwa, but only sort of. Certainly a great old one. Um, and Snipe Hunter kind of agrees with that. Yeah, so we did. I'm just going to touch on this quickly since we've been debating this in the forums and about goos, great old
Well,
ones,
OGs
and outer
actually, outer
gods.
gods, yeah.
Yeah, and whether we'll be able to kill those. And I'm kind of thinking that we have a chance of um, killing elder gods, but I don't know if we're going to be able to destroy great old ones or outer gods. That seems kind of antithetical to Lovecraft's cosmicism. So we, banish them, get them out of the way, maybe get them to go to sleep for a while. Um, but what are you guys' thoughts on our character's ability to kill the gods in
My thought,
Revival?
yeah, my thought is I don't want a god to just be reduced to something we kill now, because it's that is the thing that really gives gravity to the world. Especially because it's only going to be one of the gods that we kill. Like there's only going to be, I mean, it would be awesome to be involved in that kind of thing, but I think that just takes too much away if only a small set of players could actually undertake something like that, and then that should have such a drastic change. I mean, I guess there's probably more gods than I'm thinking about, but when you get to the level that we were mentioning, yeah, I don't think that should really be possible. I don't think we should ever. I don't know. We should certainly battle them and have encounters with them like Conan did there. But I don't think that we should kill them. I don't know. That's a really good question for Ombo or the storytellers. Maybe there'll be an opening where it kind of leads to the that kind of encounter, and maybe there's, I don't know. That's what I love so much about the concepts of revival, especially with the storytelling.
Yeah,
Yeah,
was saying it depends on which creature it is, whether it's an avatar or a manifestation, what kind of weapon. Um, Snipe Hunter says, yeah, killing Outer God is probably not even using the right words, which is part of what I'm saying too. And then what happens, right? Is it destroyed or just brooding in the darkness beneath the abyss? Yeah, and that's the kind of things that I'm thinking of once we get to the level of a great old one or an outer god. What does that even mean? What did we actually kill? Is it an avatar? Does it just take a while for it to remanifest in our plane of existence? But in terms of, so I think even as I think of the small possibilities of being able to kill a Cthulhu or something on that level. Um, the other concept that was going through the forums was the possibility of taking over their um, portfolios, is what they're called in D&D. And these things are aliens. I think that's like expecting a crow or a bee or an octopus to run NASA. I mean, like, there might be some other intelligent species out there, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be capable of contemplating sending a space probe to Pluto.
Right.
Yeah, my answer is a little Machiavellian. I think you should believe that it's possible,
Yes,
whether or
I
not
think
it
that's fine.
actually is.
Yeah,
And personally, just sort of due to certain metaphysical and and uh, and almost eschatological um, uh, perceptions, I'd probably say it's not possible, but I think it's just fine for people to believe that it is.
yeah.
And if anything, it will provide them with very interesting and still ultimately high-reaching, I think, things to do, whether or not it really means what people think it means.
Well, and it's especially fascinating to get people to try because I would love to see an octopus try to run NASA. Or a crow. We know that crows are smart enough to take nuts and plant them out in the street and have people run over them with their car so they can get to the meat. Um, so there's some interactions that we could have, but you know, whether or not a human could actually maintain all of the different facets of what would be necessary to try and control a domain that an outer god controls,
In
that
the
will be
end,
interesting to see.
it will be a farmer that can do that. I'm sure.
Exactly.
Indeed. Classic David versus Goliath.
Exactly.
Our shepherds will kill the gods.
Fully cool. Well, I think I'm going to wrap up. Does anybody have anything else they want to talk about?
No, I mean, I think we've reached a good point. Next weekend rather, we will be very honored to have Snipe Hunter and Ombwa on as guests. We've had them each on individually, but we haven't really had a chance to talk to them both in the same room. So now we can turn them against each other and milk them for all their worth in lore and design. But
Yeah,
yeah,
they offered for it to be a question and answer session. So there is a thread in the forums now for people to add questions if they want us to try and get to them next week. Um, Lethality, I'm hoping you will be back
I
next
will.
week.
I will indeed. If you'll have me, I will be
Yep.
here.
And yeah, send us your questions. We'll be back next week with Snipe Hunter and Ombwa and Lethality.
Can't wait for that. Yeah, I would say spread the word. Let's get lots of people in for that one.
Yeah,
indeed.
sounds good.
And there's a thread in the forums. I don't know if we're going to drop the link, but there is a thread in the forums that Diggs so graciously
Yeah,
posted, so that we can start gathering questions in advance.
let me try and grab that and post it. Yep. Okay. So I think that's it. We can be out. Thank you. Rose hosted us. She worked at the tech for us, and I think it worked well.
Thank you, Rose.
Yep.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Yep,
See
and
ya.
have a great week, everyone.
Bye.